All right, I'm gonna hang up. Bye.
All right, I sent out the email chain. I probably didn't get a bunch of people in the chat. Sorry.
Well, you might want to fix your mic. It's been a little weird.
Oh, is that mic problem resolved?
No, it is very bad.
Is anyone else getting it like super, super bad?
Yeah, it's the same thing that happened yesterday. You might just be better going without it.
Yeah, I thought I had it fixed, and apparently I don't. So just gonna stick without it. Okay, I sent it out. Are people good to go? Is anyone not ready? Sounds good. Contention 1 is Yemen. 100,000 have died from fighting in Yemen. Almost all perpetrated by Saudi Arabia. Japan times 1030. Yemen's civil war has covered 100,000 people. Like said, Saudi Arabia, 6 schools, hospitals, white partners, and killed thousands. That's why it's like 2019, the second deadliest year on record. The Saudi coalition was responsible for 67% of all reported civilian deaths, civilian fatalities, marriage, aggressive numbers, down to kill those who died in the humanitarian disasters. No data proves Saudi Arabia has blatantly violated the ceasefire. True 417. Saudi was just in the very section Yemen, civilian activities that dismissed efforts to play the casting over a peace agreement that Yemen did. Advisor said they recorded 106 Saudi letters, 6 across 26 ways. The war's only escalating. MBS has already violated the ceasefire. The Houthis believe its deploy ending arms sales is key. After Korean 410 after the ceasefire, Saudi struck a civilian target. Saudi Arabia ceasefire is not without precedent. Israel adopted the ceasefire. It's attack no step to pay responsibility for COVID. The Saudi nation is not expressing conviction for peace. Ending arms sales is key to build momentum for peace. And U.S. support ensures Saudi Yemenis get aid in forces. The Saudis and Christian forces that a number that ever Washington was sent to the middle of the Saudis shown facilities in the Iran shown facilities in the Yemen. U.S. support should the scales. That's why peace building was single most effective way for Russia is to stop somebody siding without U.S. assistance. The coalition for that. Clinton will give Iran a new urgency. Peace talks which is called the U.S. hold on. footed race much more difficult, giving Yemeni people a fair chance against COVID. Don't be fooled. Only getting arms will ensure these ceasefires effective. Hard during 330, the war spiraled into the world's greatest military catastrophe. Traumas made the way to space by Chrissy Tales, bombs, consequences. Hard to find thousands of millions killed, 100,000 dead, 10 million bring a famine of 2 million kids of power and bomb campaign. It's a billion navigations by violations, loss of war. The United States responsible for 73% of our celebrations with that. As we started to deal with COVID, it's time to bring all available pressure to go away. And this is firing a concluded agreement to end the conflict by ending arms in the United States. That can make it happen. Ongoing conflict guarantees mass death from coronavirus and makes negotiations ineffective and immediate end to the war. It's key. ICG 324. The populations of conflict fighting on these countries are vulnerable. The disease can be hard to pursue. Population with trust in governing our medics who struggle to get released. A security obstacle sign with the COVID-19 response. The highest risk may be human basic hygiene, social distancing, and impossible delivery. Transmission has been delayed in the Yemen war. A decimated weak health system. COVID again. A different side EPs are exposed. The disease could weaken international institutions and serve areas. Travel restrictions, play deviations. Efforts to U.S. and have been close to traveling. Travelers have no time. Leaders have no time to devote the peace processes. Diplomacy study and news officials by report these are canceled. Disease could affect peacekeeping. Long-term trends prove the war will only escalate. Claims that peace is coming are ignorant of the magnitude and complexity of the suffering. Abdul Karim. 20 reality is dashing. You have a hope that you knew you'll bring in the Saudis war. Agreement is been agreed by Saudi, which was with the military campaign. A coalition boosted the military presence under the Department of Defense will continue to run 20 Hodaidas on the brink of a catastrophe. But Caesar officials that Trump will not in this coalition suffering as long as the U.S. continues supporting Saudi efforts and the war failed and the war failed and many tried to pursue peace efforts as possible. This approximate reality said reflects lack of comprehension coming into reality seems to be assuming themselves with the bubble against the and Saudi attacks and market show that Saudi is generally seeking peace. This is they're prepared to start the UN has to go deeper into devoted to driving Saudi the war and Yemen will escalate. In 2020, ending arms sales has a clear unambiguous signal to Saudi Arabia to end its war in Yemen and causes broader follow-on. Spin on 19 U.S. arms embargo against Saudi would be a clear signal of record disagreement by continuing to provide weapons to Trump versus Saudi policies. Arms embargoes are effective signals to come away to 6 8 to dissatisfaction to influence the behavior because the way we are submitted to everything there. Behavior Saudi Arabia have to rethink its position that has support from that. U.S. over and other actions that indicate support. Trump is given positive signals to our embargo and arms embargo being included in the signal of the United States. It is proves the actions U.S. embargo would send a signal that allies said of underexplain their participation in their constituencies to provide embargo support for building coalitions for more transfer embargo that could affect Saudi behavior. Saudi Arabia would require the access material that transition would represent a mechanism that could facilitate a delivery rate is difficult for end user controls. Saudi would object end user controls and seek this applies. The plan immediately grants offensive operations in Yemen and creates leverage for political settlement. Goodman 18 Bar Fisher for the underground capabilities in Yemen. PGM suspended a decentralized Yemen for maintenance and sustainment by blocking access maybe media effects. We have no subsidy for surfacing. Make sure purchase locks the person nation to defend a posture across the web. That's the US. I'm going to cut a supplies that to the RCB grounded tomorrow. The Houthis will make peace with the coalition, but only after the US stops supporting it. 4-9-4. The Houthis have been portrayed as a disorganized rebel group that Houthis implied divine flexibility and least source of alliances. The Houthis are principal cooperation with the coalition. The Houthis absolve the regional rivals by emphasizing the Western actors are the ones that journey against the starch. The Houthis insist Saudi are acting on the orders of the US, implying that it's not malicious but misled. They encourage a political sentiment. The notion that the Houthis are grounding in proxies is completely wrong and used to justify militarism. They are 125 by claiming the Houthis are running proxies last year to justify what is happening in Yemen. Houthis do not adhere to one relation. The majority central anxiety. Houthis believe in social justice and federalism in Iran, but it's not the notion that fits the ongoing narrative that Iran is the bad guy. That US is submitted the Houthis are in Iran and not Iranian proxies. I tell the trouble wake up to the reality. The notion Iran is backing the Houthis is always asserted but never proven independently. Weapons sold to the Saudis are dispersed throughout Yemen, expands the harm to civilians and makes the crisis worse. Al-Baghdad and all 11-7. A Saudi-like coalition in Yemen are continuation of American weapons into the country. That Saudi Arabia has transferred American weapons to Al-Qaeda fighters, militias, and other factions in the country. Weapon was different in defiance of end-user agreements. Previously, years military hardware is still flowing. That and no measures are addressed illicitly distributed U.S. weapon. The conflict between the Saudi Arabia and Houthis and a coalition remains unresolved. Air Av. The statistics are wildly underestimated. Round 15 estimates are the truth. The number of those who are dead is much higher. Journalists got access to all people that are wishing we invented to give the war the coverage. There's just a system of these deaths. Until you record those economies, it's easy to have died. These whatever recorded as natural causes. This is about the genocide. Studies targeting the Saudi population. Many are trapped. It's difficult to argue these conditions are compatible with life. It is hard to argue military stakes can be anything other than intentional genocide. The plan, the United States federal government should substantially reduce direct commercial sales and foreign military sales of arms to the government of Saudi Arabia from the United States. Contention 2 is framing. First, be skeptical of negative scholarship. Representation of the Yemen war in the media is flawed. Failure to conform to the narrative of American morality means that people that report on the crisis shown to the Yemen civil war is the largest humanitarian crisis in the world. Google search data just lack of coverage that everybody's problems of terrorism are along with journalistic obstacles. The reporting the economy observers to describe the conflict as a forgotten war. The Yemen war cannot be framed as a positive American intervention. It's not easy to support one side with complete moral certainty. What results is that avoidance of the issue interest in media coverage of public interest. That Saudis have impeached on us access to coverage of the Rapid events. The Yemen war is a prime example and but it presented a clear moralistic narrative on the giving conflict to terrorists and media coverage. reporters, think tanks, and journalists are biased and paid out by Washington, Saudi Arabia, Japan, with the Washington Post. 18 is impossible on honest discussion. So many American experts are on the side of parallel. 27 spent 27.3 million on lobbyists, more than 200 people. Registered associations, Washington, Washington, think tanks, the Middle East Institute, CSAS have accepted millions of Saudi money to universities over time. The Saudi lobby will raise sort of can they still agree the Saudi case in good faith? Second, error affirmative on impact calculus. Prioritize a probability and decision calculus. Risk calculus that focuses on high magnitude scenarios alone collapses in at South Kessler. 8, if risk is defined by the potential loss, that focus on dramatic attacks, least marginalization probabilities, the highest degree of a probability becomes a relevant calculation. The risk of estimate danger fund factor versus if any there's no balance measure of risk management. Every state security policy represents the logical catastrophe. The most absurd scenarios give possibility of concern can change potentialities of probable events are brought into the probable, although the likelihood is at least of the impression of possibility. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Threat discourse is a sham and to obfuscate the consequences of structural violence. Impact calculus should be evaluated from the position of those rendered irrelevant in traditional metrics. Jackson 12 big threats was stacked from the fixed really research structural violence areas. We were on North Korea, China, and other issues are unlikely to release society. Our society, hoping you will notice increasing inequality for them and security. A person fighting to keep social structures as they are regulatory society, but not to turn the institutions or security is misstructured and schedule sector from the structures which the growth of the committee to firmly acquiesce to security measures. You're much more likely to die from structural violence. Third, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Interoperability needs no fill. And Korea, T, and South Western 27 increased this dependency that would be very hard to break. Saudi Arabia's attempts to diversify sources has been unsuccessful. European weapons and can be made interoperable. This is not the case with weapons from Russia and China. There the Saudis need a entirely different approach to training for the military forces. Saudi Arabia have difficulty switching to a different system like Kingdom as well as the United States. Since FDR troop deployment solves all this. That's Gulf News 19. The U.S. is negotiating terms with Saudi Arabia. Trump authorized to boost the light U.S. footprint in Saudi from 803,000 troops operating gases and help the Saudi military guard against Iranian attacks, including 4 Patriot bodies at that. A different system. We want to maintain a military capability to reassure allies. Try around has demonstrated reluctance to target American personnel. Trump has made clear to trigger a military response. No Saudi prelude. Sicaria 15. Saudi Arabia is going to build a nuclear weapon. Saudi Arabia has to build the car manufacturing less than 10% of Saudi GDP. The country's education system is backwards and it's functional. Couldn't Saudi Arabia seem to find nuclear bombings to effort have to take place secretly under the threat of sanctions and disclaim Pakistan would sell nukes with the government and Islamabad is the worst such a deal could make it a prior Pakistan refused to punish Saudi place to join the air campaign in Yemen. No circumvention. Trump's relationship is solely transactional. Or Senate Chief Trump's transactional president and made his visit to Saudi conditional on billions of commercial agreements. Trump's treated Saudi business as a source of money and opportunity policy making on Trump is transactional. At the best of times, Trump's ruined deterrents into the Middle East. Hannah 1030 U.S. response. To around propagations very similar to Syria that Iran undertaking source of taxes just deterrents. It's faltering them. They're attacking the cakes. Obliged by credibility deterrence. Trump wants no part of a military death of Iran's always believed they have escalation dominance. Mark the card at escalation dominance. And I'm good whenever.
All right, cool. Oh, I'll wait for your water, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, who does the plan?
Who does the plan? The United States federal government.
Not for the purpose of counterplan competition, but normal means.
Normal means would probably Congress, but
Okay, cool.
Yeah, Congress.
Let's talk about framing. You said we should care about probability. What's the implication of this for how judges make decisions when comparing risks?
Huh? Wait, sorry. Can you repeat your question?
You said like probability is an important thing. What's the implication of that?
The implication is that if we run some sort of mitigation to the disodds probability at some step on the internal link chain, the magnitude should become irrelevant.
Okay, so your argument is that as long as you win any defense to a disad, you should ignore it.
Not any defense, but if we want to, not a substantial, but like some risk of defense, like a moderate risk of defense to the disad, we think
what
that
does that mean? So if there's like a 20% risk of extinction, you're just like no big deal?
Well, sure. I mean, we don't think that extinction is a totally like irrelevant phenomenon that you should never consider. But our argument is that when you only prioritize extinction,
no, I totally agree that like you shouldn't always prioritize extinction, but like where are you putting the cutoff at? Like it seems like the moderate defense is
like again, obviously there's not like a specific percentage because that's obviously impossible for a judge to determine. But we do think that if we win some risk of mitigation to a disad, it means that the judge should not vote like auto check out negative just because the disad has an extinction impact.
The rest of our framing contention also like indicts the idea that you can win 20% risk of a disad because like most of those authors are paid off by Saudi Arabian think tanks and like arms companies and also our
okay. So why does the fact that some of our authors are paid off mean that we can't ruin a 20% risk of a disad? Like, isn't that just a probability argument?
It indicts the idea that yes. It indicts the idea
that just seems like a defensive argument to the disad to me. But anyways, it's all right. Let's talk the case. Which reverse causal evidence do you think you have that says that post-Saudi withdrawal, the Yemen war will be fixed?
The Yemen war will be fixed. What do you mean by the Yemen war?
I mean like Houthi violence and stuff like that.
So the Porter evidence, in the terms of Houthis, we have a couple of answers. One, the Porter evidence indicates that the only reasons why the Houthis are fighting with Saudi Arabia right now is because they're scared of sort of Western support for the Saudi coalition. It says that they don't actually blame Saudi Arabia, but they are scared of sort of Western support. Second, our evidence in, I think it's the Abu Karim evidence and the true evidence indicates that the reasons why the Houthis aren't participating in the current ceasefire is because the Saudis are still maintaining their blockade against Yemen, and they don't perceive that ceasefire as credible, which the AF ends by ending arms sales.
Okay, so let's talk about those two warrants. The first one, what's the warrant for why Houthis are only doing it because of American aggression?
Well, because they're, sort of scared of external influence in their country in the way that allows Saudi Arabia to sort of enforce, enforce a sort of external Hadi government that they don't perceive as a sort of legitimate government of their country.
Okay, and then the second is post-ceasefire. What does the negotiated settlement look like?
Well, obviously, we don't know exactly what the government of
like
Yemen will look like. But it will, include representatives from the major fighting factions in Yemen right now. I can go more into depth.
The one in C has been sent. It's going to be 9, and then the advantage, framing is first. Solvency and the advantage are the same page in the one at C.
Solvency, do you mean framing?
It's
or just like the second?
Yeah, it's framing and then the substance.
Okay, give me a second.
Sorry, let me pull it up.
It's all good. Everyone can hear me okay, right? The audio's fine. I'll take that as a yes. All right, is anyone not ready? Perfect. First off, the technocratic attempt to rationally manage arms control reinforces military industrial logic and pushes violence to the periphery. Tactical reforms are fundamentally incompatible with more radical change. Cross 12 arms control was regulated. The number of types are used as certain data types of arms for disarmament was reduction and elimination. Political acceptability operate within the same policy frame as deterrence theory. The arms control was transformative, but a technical managerial project. The disarmament was to avoid at all costs. The neo-colonialist implications of pushing war to the periphery are clear. The alternative is to accelerate radical disarm movements. The explicit downplaying of massive threats demobilizes is the only way to resolve inevitable nuclear conflict. Missile 17 Trump is reviving the threat of nuclear war. North Korea with Taiwan aside and the push for modernization seeks to fill this in power. The history of nukes is frequent interventions by organized people. Over the 50 years, the world's largest social movements pull leaders back from the brink an hour during the Korean War into Taiwan. Nixon in Vietnam would stop nuclear actions. Popular protests, Eisenhower boxing by popular protests. Reagan came very hawkish, but thanks to the nuclear campaign, he adopted disarm as a public policy. People didn't want to think about it. The nuclear war, the movement challenges to maintain momentum and sense of danger. Trump is potentially driving force for another peak energy, but we haven't seen the surge yet. Develop mass pressure on Congress to mobilize sympathetic constituency. Currently proposed the president cannot initiate nuclear war. Pretty big restriction. Next off, changes in arms sales should be measured by relative percentages. Milo 16 would find the size of an arms transfer as a percentage of the patrion's total military transfer budget to a certain client relative to other clients. When an arms transfer feature small quantity system will convey insignificant support substantially reduce requires at least 25%. USC 16 definitions of terms substantially reduced under the major defense program. That means a reduction of 20% or more in the total dollar value of egg for predictable limits. The proliferation of tiny apps to target the country a weapon of the day. Next off, reduce refers to sweeping measures that establish qualitative or quantitative limits on weapons exports. That is distinct from restrictions on specific states or types of weapons. Pearson, Eddie, they are examined separately. The management implies rules licensing, sales restriction, entails this approval to specific states or types of weapons. Reduction includes more sweeping measures such as qualitative or quantitative limits or ceilings. Voting issue for limits allows explosion infinite tiny subsets that automatize case-specific restriction. Link uniqueness, not specifying which branch of the agent in the plan is a voter. Incentivizes app shiftiness that avoids agent-specific dissents and counterplans. Next off, the justices of the United States Supreme Court are to announce that they are amenable to a lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of direct commercial sales and foreign military sales of arms to the government of Saudi Arabia from the United States. The justices of the United States Supreme Court are to be firm in their conviction that the aforementioned arms sales are unconstitutional and grant cert to the next test case that arises. The courts will find a test case for the plan and Adami 90. Congress revised the law to eliminate appeals by rights given the justices complete trust above the case to decide with more than 5,000 cases pending. The Supreme Court can always find a case to raise in any issue. Justices will decide solves and sets a precedent against exec flex the permanent standing Silman 610 war powers resolution prohibits presidents from using powers commander in chief to engage in unilateral war making. The widespread concern can intervention by traditional legislative means alone because the president can veto by circumventing the war powers requires our shift authority away from Congress to self-ensuring it can continue rather than you must stop Congress to give affirmative consent to lawsuit for justice and balance. Congress is a strong basis for standing in court for justice and about ordering unauthorized U.S. military assistance. Precedent of unrepealable executive global makes preventative conflict inevitable. Sloan, what U.S. presidents use to establish precedents that strongly influence other states. Many states know Bush is the right to preventative force. These include North Korea, Iran, China, Israel, Russia, and Taiwan. Chinese states include use of catastrophic weapons and preventative war. Executive powers culminate in diplomatic obstacles. Next, off the plan sparks rapid Saudi prolife. Peterson, 18. Deterioration in ties with for greatest Saudi results of pursuing independent security course influence by KSA capabilities to pursue nuclear program preliminary work has been to leadership. We consider a viable alternative prestige may place significant more leadership instead of remains present ability to comprehend why around proliferation and supply to the KSA new triggers for acquisition of life to be prompted by concern of our Iranian belligerence. Even more compelling trigger would be major breach in KSA U.S. relations. Nuke war. Edelman 11. Pakistan could sell operational nuclear weapons and deliver systems to Saudi Arabia. India would target Pakistan's nuclear weapons in Saudi. Any decision by the Saudis to seek nukes would be highly destabilizing, increasing instead of others pursue nukes and increase their ability to so through more powers would be prone to miscalculate escalation. Multipolar systems less stable create incentive for attack emerging nuclear powers might avoid nuclear exchange. New powers might launch on warning. Uncertainty would trigger regional nuclear war. Next, off offensive arsenals of the linchpin of deterrence against Iran. Otherwise, Iran will scale up in gray zone aggression. Rosenthal 12. The offensive weapons permit GCC states to retaliate against Iran. The level of aggression, precision strikes, and explosive facilities if Iran chooses to retaliate. Offensive weapons will help states limit the damage while imposing additional cost support. Escalation dominance. Bilateral planning assistance. Space advances eclipse Iranian capabilities. Help Saudi Air Force. More from Iran threat to Iran defense weapons alone not adequate. No system of defense can be perfect. Weapons needs more useful. Helps to alleviate the defense planning requirements, especially important if the United States ought to see repetitive strategic refocus causes devastating wars across the region. Mead 15. The Iran votes gains regional alliances hegemonical to create major crisis would require American intervention. Or Trump triumphalist Iranian regime would be in the world oil drive violence and other actions to destabilize the region. Proliferate among countries who do not want to balance the Iranian nuclear program. Saudi and other states could tighten links with Egypt and Japan to expansion of Pakistan's nuclear capacity. This could intensify the arms race with South Asia and increase the chains of conflict between India and Pakistan. Fear of rising Iran the increases deepens links with fanatical terrorists. And next off, fast reauthorization now. Infrastructure lied in 325 trillion. Infrastructure scaled back from 2016. White House looking to unleash massive stimulus. Infrastructure is necessity. COVID-19 crisis provides incentive for Congress to move ahead. Arms sales flip that. Flatland and Lipin 19 could stop Trump from pushing arms sales, trying up the Senate floor time, putting the president's close to solid odds with his foreign policy. Republicans criticized decisions despite congressional opposition that could tie the Senate floor for 220 hours. Also, litany of existential risks. Mark 17. Trump's plan to upgrade failing infrastructure could not be more timely in protecting national security to handle the challenges with nation increases in threat from rogue states and nations such as North. Without up-to-date infrastructure, ballistic missile strike would multiply large-scale blackouts, unrealistic stress on accelerated Medicare. The massive cyber attacks. Experts don't believe that we're prepared to handle an offend which hackers had infect infrastructure, creating outages. Next, off the coronavirus response has kept the DIB afloat. That's key to the economy, but arms sales profits are key. Harper 323. Defense Department has taken several actions to mitigate the impact of coronavirus on the DIB to protect the contractors while since accelerated payments, tax rates, loans, exempting contractors excuse delays, cash flows. The lifeline protects the economy and contracts import avenues to industry flow. Cash reinforce critical elements. Collapses leadership extinction. Borough 16 multilateral system premise on economically strong U.S. It is a rise in right-wing populist parties. Russia and China see themselves as great powers. Believe they have rights to dominance. It's changed over historically decided by bloody contests. One could visit military conflicts between the U.S., China, and Russia. There is no vibrant global governance system. The U.S. leadership new tech creates big risk geoengineering, synthetic biology, and nanotech terrorists. Geoengineering could interfere with climate change systems. There's little turn into global co-ops. Economic times have seen public become distrustful multilateral institutions. Case framing. Competing rights can collapse. Only ethical options to minimize unnecessary deaths. Green 10. Science is telling us that moral judgment is not a rational enterprise. It is unlikely there is any coherent moral theory can accommodate moral institutions to find Scientology in terms that are not Scientological. Consequentialists are against treating people as objects by counting every person's well-being. If you ask a Scientological person what is wrong to say, push someone to see if other saints will be tautological. Others will be more sophisticated, but these centuries don't explain anything. There seems to be something power deeply right because they give voice to powerful emotions, but they don't explain the philosophy in question. Trust yourself. Selectively accounting for certain biases results in worse forms of bias. Yudaski 8. By teaching yourself another bias, I've made you slower to reach evidence. Biases are widespread, but inspection must be applied to our own ideas of others have isolated within every logical flaw to detect BC. Stupider. They have the burden of rejoinder. If arguments are so bad, they should be able to easily defeat them. Yudaski 8. If you believe someone is guilty of psychological terror, then demonstrate your competence by first demolish their factual errors. If there are no factual errors, then what matters is psychology. Recognize that literary criticism and scientific one. Quantify the probability one must study. Saudi influence evaporated post-Khashoggi. Politico 18. Saudi Arabia was typically a formidable lobbying operation has gone quiet. Sign of a kingdom's diminished influence. In Washington, the lobbyists have large disengagement from Khashoggi was killed senators, so they haven't heard anything from lobbyists from the Saudis. Mark the card at Saudis. The case. They'll circumvent through BPC. It's distinct from FMS. Gilman 14. In contrast to FMS program, the building partner capacity are not true FMS cases. BPC programs to be provide defense articles for the purpose of building the capacity for partners, nation security forces. The war ends now. Lawyer 417. A U.S. envoy to Yemen expressed the lead coalition and Houthis agree to end the war nationwide. Ceasefire agreement, humanitarian economic measures, search and settlement. We are making progress for releases of prisoners and detainees. Open. Son is paying salaries, opening access for ensuring the entry of ships. Threat is serious perpetuated fears of pandemic. The Houthi leader bring the hostilities to a close. The U.S. is backing the ceasefire fighting to not derail negotiations. It's the only scenario for a prolonged They swapped to drones page and on 17 growing. Of the military drones exported by China have been deployed in the Mideast. U.S. refused to sell, but China is willing to fill the void. U.S. policy is driving partners to buy Chinese. Buyers welcome cheap weapons with fewer restrictions. Chinese strike drones have been used in Saudi Arabia and Yemen. Turns the opposite. Crafts 14 risks, which combined lack of clarity create the potential for miscalc and escalation. This escalatory dynamic could be repeated in the Mideast compared with other weapon platforms. Drones make military states use more likely due to decrease stress for the force of use and increase the use of miscalc. Proliferation of drones will increase the likelihood of GCL listing attacks. The worst case will be delivered WMDs. That's fine.
All right. Hey, Ellie, can you mute yourself on the FaceTime? Cool. You good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's talk about this counter plan.
Mm-hmm.
Does it mandate that the court sort of rules against the arms sales?
So no, it doesn't mandate they rule against it. What it does is it fiats that they announce that they would, and that they're amenable to it.
Okay, and then people just like show up to the court and are just like,
yeah. So after the court announces that, then they can just find a test case, and people will come forward with the suit. We in fact read evidence that there will likely be.
Net benefit is this internal one in politics.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess the Sloan card seems to be about like the international perception of an unchecked executive.
Yeah.
Do you have any evidence that the counterplan is sufficient to like spill over to other countries?
Yeah, the Soman. Oh, you mean just modeling?
Yeah, well, that's what the Sloan card is about.
When Bush changed, a lot of people model their, balance of powers on the United States. Like when Bush, the card talks about Bush and
North Korea, Iran, Japan, China, Israel, Russia, and Taiwan all model their like executive flex off of the U.S.
Yeah, and even if it's not all of them, we don't need to win all of them to win an impact.
Yeah, and also it's just like when they look at the United States with executive flexibility, they feel like they are allowed to, and it's a norm that it's okay.
Politics. Your card says that at most the AF ties up the Senate floor for 220 hours. That's about 9 days. Why is that key to? Why does that 9-day delay cause extinction?
Well, that's assuming that they're literally just sitting there for like 9 days straight, only talking about the app.
Also, Congress is only in pro forma session right now, so there's like not even.
We're not going for a floor time link. All right, that portion of the card just shows.
It's about tying up the Senate floor.
Well, right. That's what that one line is about.
Senate floor time. No. The top part of the card is about Senate floor time.
It also talks about sort of the bad fights that it would cause. It says putting the president's closest allies at odds with his foreign policy. Republicans criticized the decision despite congressional opposition. It's like a fight link, and that floor time shows the magnitude of those fights and how long those fights lasted.
Sure. DIB, this card seems to be about how the DOD is buying out the defense industry to stop it from declining. And the line you've got about contracts, which I'm assuming is your link, is about DOD contracts with the DIB. Why doesn't that solve the link?
The card says
have you even read a link?
The card says that to protect small businesses, the government has been bailing out certain companies, but the cash flow of companies from sales is the lifeblood. That's what that line is about.
Where? But it's
cash flow is the lifeblood of companies.
Yeah. But it's about the cards about like the DOD.
No, it's not. It says
weapons from the
contracts for import. No, it's about contracts.
The line there is right after exempting contractors from orders that restrict facility accesses for businesses.
Orders from the DOD. The DOD ordered stuff from the DIB, not.
Well, right. That part above is about.
Matter.
Okay, look. The part above is about what the DOD did. And it says that it helped the small businesses and low-tier suppliers, which is the best thumper argument. And then second, the part below that says that they've pulled back a lot of the restrictions on the facilities closing and made so that they can stay open for arms sales. And then the cash flow from those contracts and profits are what's crucial.
Sure. Iran decided, whatever, it's fine. You didn't read Russia, right?
No.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Okay, I'll take like a second up, Rob.
Okay.
Okay, that was 20 seconds used. Is everyone good for an order? Okay, it's going to be case, framing, T subs, T Pearson, the critique, the court's counterplan, the Iran disad, the fast politics disad, the pro-lift disad, the DIB disad.
Sorry, could you just do the order?
Case, framing.
Just the disads is fine.
Okay, Iran, politics, pro-lift, DIB. Okay, anyone not good? Okay. Circumvention first durable. If you get that solved, we get to bend the plan gets upheld in good faith. It's key to background because Trump liking the plan shouldn't be the bright line for having an act. It's key to educational base. That core topic led to the reference to say Trump would just assist our program, which he could. The war is not ending now. A is the short term. Saudi Arabia's violated the ceasefire 106 times. Proves it's just a PR move. B is long term. Abdul Karim says Saudi Arabia's increasing their resources in the war in 2020 is proves after Corona they'll just go back. The drones argument first interoperability checks. They just can't switch their entire military to be drone space because it would take too much time and money. They'd rather just pull out of the war. Second, they can't sustain an entire genocide based off of war. They're mainly used for terrorist strikes in the status quo. Third, this doesn't solve this. The signal out if every other country is telling them what they're doing is wrong. The framing page, negative scholarship is wrong. Saudi Arabia funds US academia and pays authors write about the importance of arms to our country, which forces authors to make false predictions, selectively choose facts, prioritize probability. That's Kessler. Impact calculus. Prioritize is low probability, high magnitude threats, collapses decision making, and ensures violence continues because any action can have an infinite number of consequences, means anything will result in extinction. We're not necessarily anti-usual. It's just a question of which consequences matter. Internal link chains massively reduce the risk of the disad. Each one we see reasonable apply together. They create contrived false scenarios. That's Kessler. We'll debate them on them anyways. But Jackson says that policymakers propagate extinction series to distract from everyday structural violence. They perpetuate functions both impact, defense, and offense. They decide they're actively retaining these structures by ignoring genocide and to prioritize profits for the DIBT subs. We need to reduce 25% of arms to Saudi Arabia. We need 2018 Saudi Arabia could up 31% of arms exports. We'll send you down a chart. Counter-interpretation just means considerable cross for the substantial means considerable. It's not a specific number. Counter-interpretation 70% is substantial reduction. Even if the average is 8%, that would be slight reduction. Territory in 16 valuable arms transfers was supposed to mean 65 billion, a substantial decrease from the 79 billion. The valuable arms deliveries with 33 billion, decreased slightly from 36 billion. Prefer A's quantitative definitions are impossible. Arms agreements are in fluctuation. Chaser total export percentages yearly. BD they allow every country after which arbitrarily distorts the literature and destroys background. C functional of check answers to fill in and leverage counterplans means the FS of substantial space in case in process counterplans. Also check default reasonability competing terms because of race at the bottom most exclusive definition. T Pearson. We send a quantitative limit on arms transfers. We explicitly curtail weapons exports. Counter interpretation reduce students mission size. Ingram. An idiot consideration the plain means that brings the principle term and legislative intent. The plain meaning of reduced means mission size. Prefer A. The over limit everything except for Holger's asked me to predictability. Their authors finding a way to use words in his paper. Only ours has a broader intent to find counter interpretation. We can spec USFG. There's no resolutional basis for A-spec means it gives you predictable ground and cross-sex checks. A-spec is unpredictable. Hundreds of USFG subsets make it impossible to prepare for all of them. The critique. Weigh the political goals of the advocates, the impacts they all solve versus fairness. Anything else whose aim is the one you see seconds problem solving violence in Yemen. Those ignored by policymakers discussing what happens, possible solutions, gives us possible strategies to address the conflict. Permutation do both. There's no link. Their evidence is in the context of arms control norms like the NBT. The affirmative state Saudi Arabia isn't Western enough to have arms just so they are committing violence. Reject their totalizing critique of all humanitarian justifications for arms control. Perturban 18. What sounds figured around is actually the result of NGO average radical critique perspectives. Bracket out the ways in which legitimacy of war technology significantly circumcised freedom of action. Radical trees offer an radical road because ending its very voice are implicating the old order. NGOs appropriate dominant discourse oriented for military necessities, building protection. The hegemon loses legitimacy. The only way to gain credentials back is for your policies in line with requirements. Norms become pivotal points when critique could be applied. The military open themselves criticism lead to further constraints, bring the public to people decisions represents the immense potential NGOs up to the skills towards humanitarian side. Link toward the AF challenges militarizing by viewing the arms as part of the broader context of American colonialism. Their impacts are critical of American intervention, which the AF prevents by severing support for the Saudi-led coalition and Yemen. Permutation due to after the lens of the alternative conditionalities of issue causes 2C stress, which change unique controls mean you can never read our best offense and irresponsible argumentation because they can kick out of whatever winning. The all fails either doesn't discuss Yemen as a humanitarian catastrophe, doesn't end arms sales there, or it does, in which case the permutation solves. The court's counterplan. Permutation do the counterplan. There's no enforcement. Soman and 13 judges are appointed by the president to measure like they will want to strike down laws, judge ban on other branches to enforce their decisions to enforcement will be non-existent. They find other political ways. These constraints will particularly likely deter courts from striking down federal laws. There's a delay deficit. It takes years for other branches to follow enforcement and for the courts to reach a decision, which means people in Yemen die in the interim. Permutation do both. It's also linked because the courts and Congress can restrict the executive mindset. The other voting issue. There's no literature base for changing individual justices' minds, and it's unpredictable. Trump does not listen to courts empirically. He's he's ignored them. And he said he'd ignored them in the impeachment trial, and he pressed them on the travel ban case. It links to politics, but it still spurs debates in Congress whether the courts have the power to do this. North Korea and Iran definitely don't model the U.S. exec flex, so there's no internal link, but the normal means of the process of the act constrains the executive loose. In 1910's plan to introduce a bill on arms sales to Saudi Arabia, the process will allow Congress to weigh in on the security relationship and restore Congress's role in foreign policy. The Iran is sad. This is absurd. The U.S. has massive defense budget, could crush Iran's military in seconds and carpet bomb Iran to the Stone Age. There's no scenario in which Iran openly was war with the United States, but either Trump makes the perception of deterrence inevitable, or actually, Iran's moves to nuclearize either prove they don't care about Saudi deterrence, or they're just doing it for their own security and aren't planning on launching a war. Iran is wrecked now. War one, our veterans with devastating coronavirus outbreak, a broken economy, spiritual medical equipment. Iran is a global epicenter of the virus. More than 470 cases. Public health experts estimate the bill told to be 7 times higher. The United States has doubled down, imposing fresh sanctions. It's offered medical aid. Iran has refused sanctions, or maybe have made it possible for Iran to buy items like ventilators and test coronavirus. Iran ignored by its own health experts, no action, enforce social distancing, allow the virus to unchecked. That Trump sees the virus an opportunity in tandem with sanctions to force Iran to capitulate to American demands. Market demands. Troops deter because we have them in the region. They still signal our commitment there and prove that Iran would never actually escalate. And the Israel and the UAE alliance them because we provide them with offensive weapons, and they obviously deter Iran in the region. The fast politics is sad. The app is being debated right now. It thumps the link, but we all know it won't pass. Harrison 4-7 Democrats are renewing last year's push to cut off arms U.S. support to Saudi. There was bipartisan support last time, not enough to overcome objections. Keep the pressure on all parties. Committee vote as soon as Congress returns. Uniqueness overwhelms the link. It's tied to COVID, which means they'll need it inevitably. The internal link is also a joke. It's only about delaying the agenda max at 220 hours. They need a reason why the next 2 weeks are key. But fiat solves the link because normal means it's an immediate pass with a unanimous vote, and floor time doesn't even exist right now because they're not in Congress. Lawmakers will compartmentalize on separate issues. Kavanaugh proves Herdman. 18 midterm Congress approved aviation policy measures to combat opioid use. The bipartisan water infrastructure passage. McConnell hailed the bipartisanship. Even as senators fought over Kavanaugh. In the same breath, lawmakers combine themselves in memorial over major issues that yet for major parts of partisan courts, and the other lawmakers compartmentalize their disputes. Infrastructure is being cut anyways. Reckless. In 4-7 next bill is no longer starting to talk about huge infrastructure improvements. It looks to focus on extending the programs from the last package. Pelosi said the bill should extend and expand the measures in phase 3 negotiations similar to the original CARES Act. The proliferation disad. Troops solve. We just sent them and they signal our commitment to the alliance. Trump thumps Middle East assurances, pulling out of Syria, insulting allies in his weak response to the Iran bombing. Saudi all proof there's no Saudi prolif. A26 Zakaria says they don't have the manufacturing or technical capabilities to build a bomb. Be international disincentives check prolif. Burkhardt 17 Saudi Arabia jeopardized its good standard in the international community established through treaties non-proliferation regime. Saudi Arabia with sanctions economic security. Don't let Saudi Arabia's economy is predominantly reliant on oil exports. Targeted sanctions could devastate its economy and hurt its security. Threat of sanctions would carry great weight. The government may displace its larger budget deficit in history if there's a decrease in revenue. So able to spend money balancing Iranian influence. Congress thumps. They've been trying to end arms for months. It signals uncertainty in the alliance, and security guarantees don't prevent prolif. Blake and Lorber. 18 policy literature is assuming guarantees can be effective. States with nuclear armed allies were neither less more nor likely to explore nuclear multi-element logic analysis. Similar fund relationship. Joe Garza concluded that states receiving guarantees are most likely to have nuclear weapons programs. Currently reported that all control for guarantees fund relationship. Acquisition Furman reported all of his models fund relationship. There's no impact. Mueller. 18 proliferation must be vetted. Seems plausible, but the world is survived the acquisition by some of the most reckless murders in history. Proliferation is still rather than spend up sevens. Consider if you have nukes so difficult and expensive, strategically provocative, alarmist, misjudged on only pace, but also its effects. The DIB disad. This is not a disad. They do not have a link to arms sales or an internal link about the DIB being key to the economy. If they read them in the block, the 1AR will make new answers on this disad. Your uniqueness evidence is about domestic contracts, which proves that arms sales aren't key, or the government will just bail out the defense industry post-Abbas, what they're currently doing with Corona. Corona definitely thumps the economy because the stock market and unemployment are at an all-time low, and Saudi Arabia is not key. Hard saying 19 firms could do without sales to Saudi Arabia. They may just soon to find the Pentagon budget provides ample funding for procurement and R&D. Arms sales in general important to key firms, but the earners were missile defense would remain untouched. The biggest earners were allies in Europe and Asia. There's no great power war. Fat Y 17 nuclear arms came to exist at the same time. Great power stopped fighting. There's no coincidence. Proliferation still after the Cold War. The same number of nuclear states. The number is sufficient to generate fear of war. Modern integrated markets contain powerful incentive for peace. Economic dependence provides states for incentive for states to resolve disputes peacefully. His history is alongside the number of democracies. Democracies really fight conflicts with absent regimes, laws, and institutions here to inhibit aggression. Wars not recur. The UN can take credit. Rights revolutions contribute to the decline of war. All of the above contribute to change the way people view conflict, self-removing glory, and replace it with revulsion.
Hey, could you send out the T subs chart that you said you would, or was that
yeah.
sent?
Can you send that out?
Yeah,
Also, I don't think the politics cards were in the doc.
Oh, they're not? That's my bad. I'm sorry.
Everybody else saw that too, right? It's not just me. Okay.
Yeah, I'll send out the and Will, can you send out that chart? Okay, this should have the politics cards.
It's Jeremy, do you want to wait or are you good? Yeah, I'm just gonna assume he's saying I'm good.
Yeah. That's what I was saying.
You good for cross-ex?
Yeah, I'm good.
Let's start on the framing page. The Kessler argument, infinite, decision calculus collapses when we assume extinction is infinite. What are the implications on a disad?
The implications on a disad should be
why is extinction infinite?
Oh, well, no, your argument about how like extinction should come first because like it kills so many people and this is like infinite magnitude is what our Kessler evidence indicts. It talks about how like being like extinction is infinite, so it has to outweigh any instance of structural violence that we can solve, or like solving a genocide never allows us to.
What the Kessler card does is it says if you assume infinity times x is anything, you're going to get infinity because he just ignores calculus. So I guess the question that we should say is just, like, is extinction infinite?
Like our argument should be that we should not treat it that way when making decisions because anything else sort of collapses any form of logical decision making.
That's fine. The T debate, we meet in the
one?
context of arms sales.
Wait, sorry, which debate?
The T subs debate.
Okay.
Substantial. No sales to. What does the F reduce?
I'm sorry.
No sales to Saudi in 2020. What does the F reduce?
The F reduces like the sales to Saudi Arabia. I'm not quite sure what you mean by this.
There haven't been any notifications or sales in 2020. What does the F reduce?
The F reduces like
does it cancel
contracts and future sales, I suppose?
Okay, so contracts, future
that's
sales.
like a kind of silly way to evaluate the topic because like obviously like Saudi Arabia is like the
Sure. Does the AF change things like THAAD?
bad. Like I don't know. It's
What
not
do you
really
mean you don't know? Because that's important.
I mean, it's not really necessary to solve our advantage. Like I don't know. I don't think the AF takes a stance on THAAD.
The THAAD thing that we have with Saudi Arabia right now isn't like an arms sale. It's just
it's also not through FMS DCS. It's like sent over with troops, so it's not even like relevant to the topic. I don't think.
It's a U.S. system.
I mean, you did say you canceled contracts, which are delivered.
I mean, we cancel FMS and DCS contracts, but like that is not being sent over with an FMS or DCS contract.
Okay, that's just not true, but that's okay. Let's talk about the Iran disad. The argument that like the perception of deterrence is inevitable. I guess what does Iran fear in terms of, the defensive arguments and troops that you've
our Gulf News evidence is actually fantastic at talking about how troops ensure deterrence maintains in the region no matter what, because basically Iran knows that if they expand anywhere into Saudi Arabia, they'd risk.
But what's the retaliation at that? It just seems like troops would be able to stop them, but not.
Wait, I don't understand what you mean
by retaliation. Troops might be able to stop them on the ground, and THAAD, questionably stops missile strikes. But what's their like? What are they losing?
What is who losing? Like Iran doesn't want to risk war with the U.S.
All right. 10 minutes starting now. And at 8:20. All right, it's sent. My genius saved it in the Octas folder for some reason. The order is going to be T subs, the deterrence disad, the court's counterplan, then framing case. Anyone need it again, or is everyone good?
I don't need the order again, but give me a second to pull it up.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm good now.
All right, awesome. Topicality, topic glass must reduce total level of arm cells by at least 25%. They're less than that. That's both the Cypri and the SAM evidence for the contracts we made. The card might be in the context of one contract, but the resolution says substantially modifies FMS and DCS as a whole, plus Milo says it should be as a total percentage. Anything else links to all of our offense as well. The we meet of 31%. We might have sold a lot of arms in 2018, but the app can't reduce those because it's actually after 2018. We've already sold the plan text, and a vacuum creates a moral hazard for vagueness. Force impossible to not have to go for T and substance one, but they don't meet under it because the plan modifies solidity, not total sales, and it means the plan's impossible. So you vote neg on production. Their counter term exposed the topic to an endless proliferation of tiny subset. We sell tons of different weapons in 98 different countries. Large topic ensures the neg is structurally behind and diminishes incentive for case-specific research, which is the largest internally to clash. Also, eviscerates neg ground because every topic set requires large change from the stats code to overcome linkages. Neg ground outweighs the first class speech, case selection, infinite prep, no universal counterplan means we're dead without it. Considerable defining substantial with synonyms renders the term entirely meaningless. Links to our limits office and make prep impossible because nobody knows what to prepare for, but they don't mean it because only we have cards that provide expert opinion on what it means to be considerable. Theo Harry is bad versus not. A definition says less than 8% isn't substantial. That doesn't mean more than 8% is substantial. 2, it doesn't work for the topic. He doesn't use percentages, and it's based off a different baseline. Functional limits fail. Choice cut shift. You have to avoid them. At best, they force reliance on hypergeneric decimates clash. No functional limits. Low baseline for linkages. Lack of a universal counterplan. And our interpretation is most precise that it ways because T is a descriptive question, not a normative one. Predictable limits for shared understanding of the topic. DAF and neg prep. Unpredictable limits instead of DAF. Goal push shifting were most predictable. 1. Our interpretation is intent to define use phrase substantially reduce it from an authoritative governmental source in the context of defense export program. Second is DoD definition. That's default. Next, substantial Russian mean the reduction of 25% of our total dollar values. Third, contextual. That's fine. 12, international arms transfer increased by 24%. Increase not substantial. Our interpretation allows sufficient ground and flexibility. The topic is unique in that every app requires its own set of DAs. Advantage diversity ensures overlapping is impossible. Only forces creativity. They can read regional apps like East Asia, GCC, NATO, Africa, and weapon type apps like BNB or French use companies like human rights filers or profit apps like Roho's econ impact assessment or graded climate offset pay. Reasonability is bad. Some of all reasonable in terms of both limits. Force judgment better precision solves because yes or no we can't shift goalposts, but T is substance. The deterrence is set. Iranian expansion goes nuclear, creates major crises that require U.S. intervention, manipulates global oil prices to stabilize region with gray zone aggression, support for regional proxy, externally causes Pakistani balancing that escalates India. Pakistan died. That's me. No total impact defense of the 2 easy obviates. Framing and means I don't need to read new app on it. Legal learn terms case absent effective regional deterrent infrastructure. U.S. forces take more escalatory but less effective action. This row is in field 12 off at the weapon substitute for U.S. direct action. Dangerous becoming ineffective demand large scale, highly dispersed U.S. deployment low level aggression like from rate of critical targets already spending tens of billions of dollars from specialized security forces who can defend itself without tracing a large number of troops. U.S. threats of retaliation, lack of credibility, vital interest, not directly chance. Also, turns case because Iranian expansion causes further Middle East war, which literally turns case because it destabilizes the region, causes further worsen of the Yemen war, and also means that the app is insufficient to solve. Structural realist theory best explains Iran only deterrence can alter their behavior. That's it. Love it according to realism. Too much dominant action state conserving their security and power colony. Now when it comes to be vulnerable, ultimately concerned with Iran's security, commodities desire for independence, desires the two ideals above everything else. Iran's behavior best is unitary. Conclude that Iran's participation in Iraq and Iran's support for Hezbollah when they're strong enough, incredible effects commodities perceptive, with the result being commodities willing to negotiate. Empirics prove that Shafa 19 appeasement never practical solutions for only using the room discovery advancing student aspirations, sponsoring terrorist organizations threatening American allies across the region, even before Yemen Israeli intelligence proved he was lying, lifting the sanction law, dictatorship to build new funds for missiles, cause havoc, Iran blackmail by violating the agreement, never took seriously in the first place, attacking commercial oil. I think it's proved the point that Iran is not interested in peace or diplomacy. The prologue argument is insubstantiated, so we get new 2 in our answers if they blow it up, but there's no prologue that's Fitzpatrick. 20, Iran does not reassert its program. Commentators assume that based on Iran's retreat for enrichment limits, Iran keeping a foot abiding inspection requirements, Iran will produce enough less than 2 years. The difference that JCPOA better than 2013 Iran invested in a atomic bomb, alarm successful will fall. Worst case, assume Iran will get everything right the first time, uranium exploding, a warhead and nuts cook. The iron missile Iran would be full side enough, and arms sales dissuaded. That's Rosenfield 12 and power JCPOA to help dissuade Iran from developing nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons not a panacea. Diminished importance with interest rates that say no small nuclear force absent and nuclear non-military capabilities GCC. Conventional power eclipse Iran's on nuclear military power. Iran's freedom to commit low-level aggression could diminish even acquiring nuclear weapons. Uniqueness, they didn't make an answer in the 2AC, so I'm not going to read any evidence. Anything in the 1AR justifies new arguments, but they've conceded strong now because Trump is supporting it with the concentration of his policy and that arms sales are critical to it. The Corona thumbs argument, coronavirus is a window for Iranian aggression, relaxing deterrence fights attack the Taliban. And Clark 20 on website, Iranian neighbors very close to America, hardly isolated. Iran's attack, including attacking oil facilities and shipping proxy attacks through Hezbollah. You should not be passive, reestablish deterrence. If clearly demonstrated Iran has not been cowed. Iran was carefully executing a strategy pandemic for its opening. Iran is eager to distract from in response to COVID. Is clearly is struggling with mismanagement. Trump wouldn't be eager to tangle Iran back malicious launch attack the incoherent message. Strategy from Washington, the violence of American isolated itself rather than lovers partnership contain up, and they're being aggressive despite weakness from COVID. That's Washington Post 360 in the shadow of COVID. Another cycle of hostilities with Iran raised new critical danger may seem like a shorty ambition. TOC conflict use the best way out of internal challenges. One alternative step up toward deterrence, defensive measures to rein in Trump's posture and enhance with the hardline regime. That's Pollock 20. The current crisis just to revolution less likely. First, there's never been a revolution without mass demonstrations. But if you're COVID completely eliminated process, there were strikes not clear anyone news. Second, highlighters responding in the most efficacious fashion. Mark that card at fashion. The Romco thumpers wrong. That's fucking 10-7. Seeing the U.S. and Saudi stepped up effort. The U.S. military deploying additional jet fighters, anti-missile system, other equipment to Saudi. Better ground Iran. U.S. continue to build important strategic partnership. The link to made offensive weapons. Crucial deterrence, they raise the cost and limit the damage for gray zone aggression, build regional deterrent capability. That's Rosenfield. Both the troops and U.S. key warrants are wrong because we can't credibly respond to gray zone aggression. We'd only respond if our direct interests are state, i.e. if they literally attack the U.S., but they don't believe that we'll respond to increased regional capability operation, which is the one in the evidence Saudi. Alliance is key to interoperability and strategic stability. The 2015 evidence is a reminder how important strategic partner with Saudi is Gulf dependent on Saudi Arabia. Cooperation critical is building deterrent stability, creating capabilities, interoperability, reducing need for power protection. Arms sales, only thing keeping Houthis at bay, curtailing them, devastating efficacy and maximum parts of the border. 19 organization official slogan God has said, great to America, Christian Jews, victory in Islam. One, not that one, the Americans should want really much less a country's location able to dominate strategic waterway without sort of the coalition who have taken over Yemen has not happened only because substantial assistance for the airship. Essentially, we can agree on, especially folks with America seeking to exert maximum pressure upon financial military capability. Saudi and Yemen is forcing Iran to keep expending resources would easily be one getting. Yemen would be a game changer. That's Brian 18. Iran has been harassing shipping aboard on Red Sea, but a base in the heel Saudi boot. Yemen put a perfect position to encircle Saudi by water, undermine Egypt, Jordan, and Israel for the purpose of arming rebels from the coast. Mark that card at coast. Getting move on to framing. Risk is magnitude and probability balances this with ours. Think of each frame in the aggregate. If you accepted a 1% risk of extinction 100 times, it's definitely worse than taking a few people. 100 time extinction outweighs for future generation are larger. It's the only irreversible impact. And existence is a prerequisite to the existence of ethics. They just flat drop our bias arguments. So no new 1 hour answers. You shouldn't let them over-determine your decision because weighing psychological factors unnecessarily complicates decision making and causes people to ironically become too biased towards bias. Stick to the math. That's Udevsky. Don't think like also substantiate our risk calculus and outweighs our bias because we have a logarithmic emotional scales. We don't view in 1,000 times different between 1 million and 1 billion deaths, but it should. The funding bias, they have to disprove our argument specifically, which is a conceded argument. It's also, they've conceded it evaporates post-Khashoggi. It's also not a large influence on the arguments those people make who would make them anyways. The Kessler argument, even if it's not extinction, nuclear war still outweighs. We'll also concede the argument from Crossex that extinction isn't infinite, which takes out the contradiction and probability floor solve this. The conjunctive fallacy is a nice FYI about how probability works, but scope neglect outweighs this, which is above. You should multiply the probabilities in back security. K is not a voter, not a neg being bad is the reason the app is good. Infinite, or actually not. Skip that argument. It's infinite nev and the app can't change it. Plus args above prove it's good. Insofar as it's a trade-off, it's wrong because there's no inherent trade-off between structural bonds and war. Turns case disprove their epic K of terror refs flows both ways. If they're right, that means they trade off with existential risk prevention, which is worse. Case debate proper circumvention. They bungled it. They conceded that it's possible for Trump to circumvent. Good faith implementation is bad because durable fiat only covers for foreign military sales itself. But the plan causes they don't get stuff over border stuff because that requires attitudinal fiat, which is bad. They also cause a de facto drone ship by defecting the ability punish Saudi to conduct man strike. That makes escalation of all their scenarios more likely. They decrease the threshold for use of force and increase the risk of miscount, which is net more destabilizing. That's cyclone crowd. They can see the terminal impact. Interoperability obviously doesn't apply to drones because they don't have to be interoperable with other units. They're autonomous, and the only other warrants is they can't sustain it on a full scale. But defer to Ev. We're the only ones who have read any evidence on this question, and it's sufficient at least to maintain strikes and stop a ceasefire and negotiated settlement, especially if they're right about the Saudi motive. But there was no clear answer to the Saudi motive argument. The war is ending because there's a ceasefire, which is tamping it down, at least limits their impact, and there's no will because of coronavirus. The Houthis are the reason they're still airstriking. That's Al Dubi. 413 Saudi coalition backing in Yemen access Houthi rebels breaking a ceasefire 241 times over the past 48 hours. Yemen, according to the ceasefire, reserving legitimate right of self-defense favor of Iranian backed project aimed to sabotage them. Houthi not serious about finding peace.
Okay, you good?
Yep.
Okay. Starting off on T subs, you made the argument that because even though it was like 31% in 2018, that means the AF can't be topical.
Yeah.
How, under your interpretation, could an affirmative ever prove they're topical without knowing how many sales we're going to do this year? Like, and not having that evidence.
So you can use 2019, 2020 sales. The problem with the 2018 one is just they've already been delivered, so you don't reduce them.
Okay, how can we predict how many sales are going to be in 2020?
No, you can look at 2019 and 2020. Like you can delete. No, here's the reason. It's not an arbitrary year selection. It's about you can't reduce weapons that have already been delivered. You can only reduce weapons where we have the notification and agreement for, but haven't been delivered.
Where do you think you read a piece of evidence that says in 2019 Saudi Arabia was less than 25%?
What the one in C we read Sam and Cypri charts.
Okay.
You can read through both of those.
Okay. Okay, that's fine.
The
Iran deterrence disad. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. The Iran deterrence disad. I guess all of your stuff you read about how Corona is making them more aggressive seems to indicate that like America has isolated itself rather than expand and leverage its partnerships to contain Iran. Why does this mean that like?
Wait, which card is this in? Sorry.
This is the Tabadi by.
Oh yeah. Gotcha.
That like America is already backing down on the region.
No, so that's the important distinction. There's two arguments there. The first one is that American credibility in the region is like has never really been a big thing. That's the entire thesis of our Rosenfield evidence, which is that Iran doesn't think that the US will intervene on our allies' behalf, which is why what's crucial for regional deterrent infrastructure is arms sales to build up domestic like partner capacity for like Saudi.
Wait, so just to be clear, it's like only about like capabilities is the only link.
Yeah. Well, we also have made ones about why there's like a perception component of Saudi capabilities, but we haven't made like a US resolve link.
Okay, but I mean, your evidence still indicates that Iran is doing things like pursuing a more aggressive strategy, and
so they have a more aggressive strategy, but deterrence can stop that from escalating and stop them from expanding.
Okay.
They have motive, but not like means if they can be punished.
All of your evidence is in the context of like GCC states. Obviously, the affirmative.
Not true.
Yes, it is. Okay, like I'll read like multiple lines from your evidence that mention GCC states rather than just Saudi Arabia.
We read like one piece of evidence about GCC states and the importance of arms sales, but we read a bunch of Saudi-specific evidence and why that's important, as well as stuff about why winning the war in Yemen is important.
Okay, I guess, yeah, the Yemen stuff. Where do you think you read a piece of evidence that says the Houthis are Iranian proxies? And
Gordon.
The Gordon evidence?
Mm-hmm.
Why does this say they're Iranian proxies? I don't think
the first thing is an organization whose official slogan is God is great, death to America, curse the Jews, victory to Islam isn't what America should want ruling anyway. The whole point is that they're
aren't the best people, but like Saudi Arabia, like it's still pretty bad. That doesn't really seem to indicate.
Well, yeah, no, and then it says it's foolish when we're trying to exert maximum pressure on Iran because the Houthis hate America, so they're allied with Iran in order to fight America, inevitably. And we can read more of if this becomes like a 1AR, but it wasn't on the 2AC and the DISAD. So that's why I didn't read any of the answers to it.
Are we good to go? All right. Is everyone ready for the order?
1 second of prep. Hen, you don't need to leave the call for this. I'm just going to write up something in the doc for just making sure we kick out the courts right.
Sure. Okay, so it's going to be the politics dissad, the prolif dissad, the DIB dissad, the courts counterplan, and the critique. Is anyone not good? Politics will concede terminal impact defense and that the plan is being discussed now, and Fiat's also links to any offense they might have on the flow. The prolif dissad will concede that troops solve answered on the Iran dissad, and will concede no impact to prolif takes out offense. The DIB dissad will concede the no link and that the card is garbage. So there's no offense on the flow. The court's counterplan will concede the permutation just to test the competition and that it's not modeled globally. He takes out the case turn and will concede that Trump circumvents courts apps and is broadly against executive, which disproves any potential structural shifts. And it doesn't access our internal link. It's about the procedural effect that their evidence about singular action. Will the mindset shift Fiat reject the argument out the team thesis of conditionality proves don't let them cross apply to the K. If it's new in the 1AR, it's new and we can have it new in the 2NR. The K. Nuclear weapons are the hammer of U.S. imperialism. They propagate militaristic temporal logics by giving the U.S. courts have leverage to maintain its monopoly over the flow of power based on imperial gradations of race, culture, and threat. Leaving them in place ossifies militaristic structures and makes usage inevitable. That outweighs the F on scope. There are micro-level tactical adjustment that's inevitable in the context of the externalities of broader militarism. Only radical shifts from the status quo can prevent inevitable resurfacings and their impacts. Also, act as an extinction argument. The miscalculation and accidental launch is inevitable in the long term, which causes nuclear winter and wipes out the human race. It outweighs on magnitude. It also turns case prolif causes mass violence, intervention, civilian psychological fear. It specifically in Yemen, Middle East is a hotspot for escalation, and using fear to be able to disarm the region is crucial. The framework debate, our framework is to arbitrate between the alternative, which accelerates the scale and scope of anti-militaristic activity, and the plan. If we win the links to the AF's discourse or rhetoric, you should vote against any permutation that severs the representations on severance grounds. That decision structure creates substantively more enriching debates that center of theoretical structure over minor tweaks. The plan and the value judgments behind it are inseparable. We solve their offense better. Understanding the ticky-tacky policy details is only useful insofar as it's informed by broader value system. Jackson 16, all the evidence from the last 14 years shows policymakers are uninterested in evidence-based policy or policy-oriented reasonable suggestion for security practitioners engaging in even more rigorous egregious practices. Direct counts within the system itself. The effect is holding up the policy relevance as a measure of good research having a distorted effect on the research itself because of the framing of the endpoint of the research pushes us towards particular kinds of questions. So evidence frames for research and the kind of problem solving about conforming the way policymakers view reality. The legitimization role of academics in maintaining state power, distorting the effects of policy-oriented research and compatibility of a commitment to both emancipation and maintenance. What I should suggest is a prohibition on policy-relevant research. When I try to attend is a broader reorientation instead of priorities. Value of recommitment. Prioritize epistemological interrogation theory at every level is necessary to establish political relevance and avoid error replication. John 17, only by distancing from particularities can science establish political relevance. Abstraction and address border questions. Say particularly relevant knowledge is not possible without reflection. The scholars are interested in improving politics and not be reduced to providing forms of knowledge by which policy may be guided by, including ensuring rival explanations can be heard. Hard debate is good. We cause app strategic thinking. Negflex outweighs proliferation of tiny apps with no generic hoses and egg or forces process bad arguments which move the app more. Winning a link to something they're wanting to see demonstrates they should be prepared to defend it. If they are too unprepared to defend the K, changing incentive structure such that prioritizing the theoretical underpinnings of the app becomes important. No ground loss. They literally get to weigh the app in our framework, which solves the 2AC argument says it was presented. They can win a perm if they beat the links. Completely ignoring reps justifies hate speech. Independent reason to reject their model. The permutations group them. Perms beg the question of framework. Since our only framework argument is that links so what I see outside the plan text can't be severed when you try them permute the alternative. If we lose framework, the links are dissets, which truths they make the movement worse. And the second perm makes no sense. The alt is action. Lens of disarm necessarily excludes decentering threats. It's intrinsic as both action and text outside plan, and alt makes the app a moving target and impossible to be app. The first no link argument is an answer to the Kubrick card. That's not us. It's about technocracy. Characterizing opposition to specific numbers types and use of specific types of arms is a form of technocratic management that is fundamentally incompatible with disarmament because it views international violence through the same lens of militarism, where it's the role of the government to not just search for ways to abolish conflict, but to shape the control and the contours of locations with it crosses. It's a fundamental distinction in how they view violence and why disarm is no longer a goal of arms as control, but a different category of action entirely. Even if they win that, we can win the 1AC is desirable minus their representations of threat, which brings me to the deterrence link. This one's huge. The 1AC forwarded the claim that great power war is now obsolete due to deterrence and independence. Miesel says that is emblematic of common trend that people wanting to not to think about nuclear war decimates movements challenges to maintain momentum and a sense of danger, which is crucial to develop effective congressional pressure. The Petrova card was kind of answered before, but the fatalism argument is solved by fear, which we'll get to on the alt debate. The link turn, we've critiqued the method through which they attempt to challenge militarism. The technocracy ensures it reinfiltrates conditionality, counterinterpret. We get what we did. Logic, you shouldn't add, but after the status quo is better. Negflex, we need some space to make up for AF side bias, first less speech, expertise, bias, take plan, space, reframing, and new apps. Innovation without a fallback. Teams will never break new arcs or experiment with a policy and critical arguments. Still incentives to do research because it makes the counterplan better. Excuse and FSBT. Dissents they need to make when we make debate impossible. Non-resolutionary theory burdens crowd out substance. So turn their offense. Dissents ad hoc condo in disguise doesn't solve any of their offense. The alt debate they dropped it solves all of their arguments and spills over globally to disarm. The only argument was that it doesn't solve case, but fear solves the terminal impact. Miesel says that the only way to galvanize movements is to be able to make them think that there's a nuclear war. So if anything, this is a critique of the absence of something, and the permutation doesn't solve.
Is it okay if we take some tech time? Because my phone died and I need to be able to talk to Will. Can we take like some of our 15 minutes?
15 minutes starting now. Are we just waiting for your phone to restart?
Sorry, it's almost back up. Okay, that was like, we have like 13 minutes of tech time. Okay, we have 9:40 prep time. Okay, we'll start that now. Wait, sorry, can we pause? 9:21. It's not working. Will, can you pick up the FaceTime?
I'm not getting the FaceTime.
I'm FaceTiming you right now.
I am.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, we'll start again. 9:21. Sorry, the T-subs violation cards, where were those?
They should be in the bottom of the 1MC. I can check to make sure they're there, though.
Okay.
Sorry, where are they in the 1MC?
Wait, sorry, can we stop prep? 744. I don't see those violation cards.
No, yeah, I just said we forgot to put them in there so we can stop prep.
Yeah, okay, 744.
Send them out. If you want, we can go back up to 8 from where you were when I said.
It's fine.
Okay. I just sent out the chart.
Thanks. Wait till we get it.
And and the SIPRI one too. Sorry. Do. Yeah, okay. It's just the same because you guys sent out the SIPRI chart. So.
It's just the same chart.
Okay, I still didn't get it, but I don't know. Will, did you get it?
No, I'm really late.
Classic reply, not reply all.
Sorry about that. It didn't send because my friend forwarded the email chain to a scouting group that I'm on. So I responded to that, which is why it didn't get sent out. Hold up. I just accidentally sent out the SIPRI one, and then now I'm sending the SAM one.
Okay.
It's sent.
Okay. We'll start now. 744.
I have not gotten it yet. Wait, stop.
Okay. No.
Okay, now I'm good. 7:44. Starting now. Okay, I stopped it at 4:18. It's sent. Is it in a different order?
Yep.
It is the case. Streaming. T-subs. The Iran disad. The critique.
Are there cards or?
Yes, I sent them.
Okay, cool. Give me a sec to download them.
No problem. Okay, is anyone not ready? All right, cool. Circumvention selling one terminal fiat solved. There's no after this doesn't apply to issues that absolutely destroys negative affirmative ground because FF loses because Trump likes arms us. Otherwise, there's no reason their interpretation is good for negative ground. We don't destroy anything, which means it's only worse that they destroy Afghan. Second, it's that their government only says that he could, not that he would. We've read all of evidence against that Trump only says arms society because it makes him a lot of money. And these programs note that Trump step one is that the efforts to king maintain the Yemen were the only card they have contextual the Yemen says that they've only been using sort of small scale strikes and they can't continue the sort of long scale civilian genocide, which is not what the Krebs card is about. Second, is that interoperability applies. W17 which is not the system integrated the Chinese drones, otherwise Jones totally Saudi and Air Force Base and Air Force Base based on Western aircraft. They say of the wars that no, it's not. 106 Saudi strikes and long-term military investment proves they're not interested in the ceasefire. And the Houthis don't believe it's credible because the blockade is still in place. Ask key because ending arms has forces KSA Sienna and list blockade is short-term and is key to limit coronavirus. Does the Houthis are responsible card is wrong because they're only not advised because of the case that I explained about the framing debate. Probability first, evaluate magnitude and probability equally instead of saying an infinite magnitude outweighs anything else. Collapses policy making because any percent infinity is still infinity. So we have to respond to true infinite consequences. If their rate of extension is equal infinity, which we said that means that magnitude times probability just sequences them equally, which means that we agree. And if we win some risk of disarm mitigation, means that magnitude is relevant. Everything else in here is relevant because it's just going to give the probability for stuff. That T substantial that we meet. Saudi was 30% in 2019. The fact that the numbers change through that static numerical definitions are absolutely impossible. And we obviously can't predict what that how many contracts are going to be Saudi in 2020 to 2021. It destroys affirmative ground because nobody ever knows what the affirmative is going to be. So again, a negative is ever debate and a T substantial plus it proves that they're not predictable because nobody knows what because it proves that quantitative definitions are not predictable, which turns their office. Now counterinterpretation substantial. That means consider what's a sort of stable basis for a negative ground because it ensures that if we're asking can we run to the absolute margin of the topic, but it still means that they don't have to rely on quantitative definitions. No limits, explosion, functional limits check. Fill and takes on solvency of every small off. They lose 20 risk go offense. The US sells so few arms, there's no advantage ground. Ground is they're worse for ground because they necessitate process has. They don't have to reduce arm sales or do so for short periods of time, which Dex links predictability, obviously debatability at ways because it determines injection. Obviously, T person is better for the topic, but it's also a terrible vision of the topic. There's no precision because substantial is impossible to find. It's impossible to find. It's Stark 97. They get West against the left definition substantial ordinary when it's not clear that I guess it's very ambiguous meaning makes that let's get hard to determine. They omit that, but put negative for affirmative for Afghan. They overlimit their absolute picks and don't discuss specific countries, which are core topic late outways the neg ground because without new absolutes, no one's set up for neg research, which makes a negative static talking and next get core generics. We said that we have weight reasonability. If you don't, their apps are obviously all loose to picks, and there no evidence that they are going to be over 25% in 2020 to 2021. Reasonability. If we don't make debate impossible, vote after if their interpretation is better. We don't need to win offense competing interpretation because of the race to the bottom, which destroys Afghan and neg legs. Now the Iran is they've conceded Iran as a turns against Iran instead, which is on the assurance. This time I'm going to cross the line here. The one is he can't have it today. Case that Trump's failure to respond to oil attacks officially means that Iran thinks they have escalation dominance over us now. Their answer wasn't sufficient because Trump didn't respond with an offensive attack. They think that they can beat us right now. Now they barely answered that arms sales aren't key. We can destroy Iran by combat bombing them because the military is way stronger. We have alliances with the UAE and Israel. There one is the evidence. That's all about GCC states. Obviously, Grace and stuff is because we have troops there, which are there to defend Saudi Arabia. So any sort of attack on Saudi Arabia would be we would immediately retaliate with, which they consider on the other short distance. That's the 1 and C, go through 7. They say the alliance with Saudi Arabia is key. They consider that because the troops who destroy the alliance, the Houthis stuff, they aren't proxy. They consider they have a different religion and a different goals, which is the 1 and C theory of it. So they can't get access to Yemen. They're only fighting now and allying with Iran because they're scared of the U.S., which is the border of it. Means that they do not have a like Jewish-Israeli partnership, a defense Iran, and destroys Iran, stop Saladin, and Israel's long quarter of fire. This is increasing relevant of Iran's rise, long standing against the self-defense complements U.S. policy. Israel's always primary number devices to the front line against Iran, making missile defense against Israel operational expertise against the capabilities of Israel has been able to later missile defense work shelters in the Middle East against Iranian missile proliferation. Just to turn the case, because obviously the U.S. doesn't intervene in Yemen. There's no incentive, and Iranian expression doesn't matter because these aren't proxies. Okay. Doesn't turn the case, there's no incentive for us to intervene in Yemen. We obviously won't make it. Framework not really going to go for it there. They said that we get to weigh the affirmative. We don't think the reps aren't important. Just that a plan is the sort of end point of our epistemology, which is also important to weigh the plan. So this is largely irrelevant. Should we say number 2, permutation, do both. We can end our justice Saudi Arabia and critique their impact. Their links do not assume the permutation because the link is just that we don't critique broader nukes and militarism, but the perm allows us to critique both, which means that nothing else really matters here. That sort of deterrence link is silly because it's weird. We don't defend it. We're just answering your dissent. New York DAB dissent said that deterrence was good too, which means that if we can sever that, if you can sever that, we can sever that too. But they've really messed up with that because if I can see the Petrova card linked to it, humanitarian justifications are key to limit violence. That's Petrova delegitimating specific arms transfers, reappropriates dominant structures by making the U.S. into an international pariah, which encourages follow on. This form of activism is key to bring military activity to the public eye, which encourages democratic critique and reform, which solves their impacts. The author is too slow and results in permanent conflict while the ivory tower plays authorities. The plan is key. Plus 39. It's really advocates the certainly alone addressing reclasses real peace community. We have February 7th. This may have been access for someone in every apply determination of war or not really be the people are understanding, but people care about substantial otherwise human priority of limiting warfare reforms. When we capable of being attained less than several centuries, where I would be then accomplish just limiting weapons to make wars more likely What? All this solve the app because they can't restrict arms sales in Saudi Arabia, or their justifications are the same as ours, which means that they obviously, which means that there's no like the permutation solves that, which justifies the permutation because it means that they reduce arms sales while also critiquing paramilitarism, which is just functionally the permutation. That question card was marked as the real issue. Sorry.
8:15 starting now.
Wait, I forgot to start a timer. What am I at?
7:55.
By the way, just to be clear, sorry, the second card on deterrence was not read, right?
No.
For the Israel one.
Okay, cool. Okay, I'm sending out the card doc. Right? Do you guys need it? It's just the 2 Houthi cards from the 2 NC. I'll send it out anyways. It's no worries.
Yeah, it would be nice just to have those.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair. Okay, it's sent out. The order is the deterrence dissad, the critique, framing, case. Right. Is everyone good? Iranian expansion outweighs it circumvents framing because they've completely conceded the terminal impact, which means it's extremely likely they cause regional crises throughout the region that require U.S. intervention. They'll manipulate global oil prices. The U.S. will intervene. It'll cause great power war. They've conceded also causes external Pakistani balancing that causes the Indo-Pakistan war as well. It draws in great powers like Russia and China. It turns case. The link alone, there's 2 warrants for this. First is Iranian expansion, even if it's not directly into Yemen, which, by the way, we do have specific to Yemen that Israel will expand. They'll expand throughout the Shia crescent, which will increase regional instability, cause new wars to prop up just as big, if not bigger than Yemen, but hard to de-escalate because it's impossible to once deterrent has already been completely destroyed. The second is troops. They've conceded that if the U.S. doesn't have effective regional infrastructure, i.e. through arms sales, then the U.S. is going to send more troops into the region later, which is ineffective for deterrence for reasons I'll explain below, but is and more escalatory, but it also turns their offense by increasing the likelihood of wars and causing further regional instability. The line by line. The first argument that deterrence is dead is our argument. They have just not understood the argument in cross-sect. Our argument is that U.S. deterrence credibility is not a thing. The only thing that makes deterrent effective is when regional countries like Saudi Arabia have the arms sales to defend themselves, because the whole point is that when Iran does gray zone aggression, U.S. isn't going to nuke them for that. We'll only do that in the context of a massive war, which is the drawn, which is what deterrence is necessary to prevent. They've conceded all the arms sales, like i.e. it's key to build up the Saudi Air Force, proven by their solvency claims that will concede that the plan just ground their entire air force. It causes Saudi to Iran to expand over into Yemen. They've conceded to also do the link arguments below it. They've also conceded it's crucial to increase support in order to be able to fight back against them, which is the only way that we can do deterrence by punishment via offensive weapons. Otherwise, they'll be emboldened to attack more. They said that the U.S. could carpet bomb them. We could defeat Iran, but the whole point is that that's not credible as a form of retaliation against gray zone, which is why Saudi deterrence needs to be credible. The next argument is that we have troops. That was answered above. We read 2NC evidence that says it's more escalatory, not effective for deterrence because they can't respond to the types of gray zone aggression and asymmetric warfare that Iran's doing, and they don't think that the U.S. will do it unless it's a major war. But they're scared of Saudi because they know that if Saudi has a strong air force and strong military, then that has the capability to check them, which is our entire argument. They say that Houthis aren't a proxy. Look, there's 2 warrants for this. First is religion. That's dumb because strategic incentives matter more. Second is goal. They dropped the quote in our evidence that says their entire goal is defeating America because they hate them, which means they'll obviously align with Iran and continue pressuring entering America will read the two new cards. Iran has control over them. It's like 18, Iran will be reluctant to acquiesce to negotiate process and given without achieving significant long been reluctant to give the green light to process negotiate with the extent of foreign influence. Difficult to discern, hard to imagine who the leadership would engage diplomatic negotiation to run opposition achieving a settlement extremely linked to real security agenda there. An Iranian proxy, most qualified assessment that Sportsman 19 Yemen has been new front for Iran as played the situation become major influence. The Houthis carrying out strike progressively deeper into Saudi Houthi as they cover for missiles like the IA assessment of the Iran source of the Saudi Houthi rebels. There's a low-cost, high reward opportunity to confront Saudi Houthi using negotiation pressure, military operation pressure, Saudi-led coalition accepting the settlement, and they'll try to say that they solved this, but it's not reverse causal because the relation has already been built, and the Houthis will still hate America post-plan. They say it's only because scared of U.S. That was answered above. They say that Israel deterred. Look, first, it's different areas. They've conceded all of the evidence specific to the oil straits directly near Yemen that the Houthis will shut it down, even external to Iran. Second, it says it's crucial that interoperability, broader cooperation between Israel and Saudi in order to be able to effectively check them. Third is all the Houthis links that was explained above. The evidence is also from the Jewish Institute for National Security.
I put the card in the dock.
Sorry, I don't have time to read it, but the answer is sufficiently answered in Saudi's key. It's a different region. It like area of Middle East. It doesn't matter. Then they say doesn't turn case because non-Yemen. First, that's a terrible argument. We do have evidence that says the U.S. would intervene in that area because of oil. Second is the Houthis is a turns case. Plus, if the wars were in other regions, it still obviously turns case. The critique. Concede the perm is just a test of competition. They shouldn't be able to advocate it, but there's no link turn because they misunderstood. It was a tricky, like, no war K that was a reverse security. The only impact to it was the existence of nukes, and our only link argument was that actually made any sense was just that they make disarm more likely because they don't threaten nuclear war, which is still a link I'll extend if they try to go for a link turn. If not, we're not extending it as offense. We also solved the link turn because we did make humanitarian justification for the war, plus they still link. Okay, framing. The only thing we need to win is a risk above statistical noise. Any alternative is bad. Their arguments are ridiculous because they severely undervalue how bad extinction is. It outweighs on magnitude because of future generations and qualitative impact. We never said, we conceded that it's not an infinite impact, which circumvents the Kessler argument. So long as you have a probability floor of a really low probability, that's sufficient in order to solve it because we still need to win a risk of the impact. They also conceded the sort of framing that you need to consider decisions at scale because that's how public policy works. If you were to accept a 1% risk of extinction 100 times, then we'd all be dead really quickly. And the scope neglect argument, which is conceded. Case. All the Houthi bad arguments are offensive proofs that they can't solve. Both arguments they can't solve, and offense they dropped the warrant that the only reason that Saudi was increasing the airstrikes is because the Houthis started. They did like hundreds of airstrikes, and then Saudi did a few in response because the Houthis violated the ceasefire first, and that was like the terms of the ceasefire.
All right, 14. Oh, you good?
The troops card, what's the author on that?
The Rosenfield card in the 1NC and the 2NC.
Judges, can we expect card docs?
As well as the link arguments
please.
about like Yemen control are external as well.
case, oh, hang on. Here. It's going to be case framing disad. Is anyone not good? Can you stop me verbally if you're not? Okay. The 2NR sounded good, but when you think about the disad for more than like 10 seconds, there's a lot of logical problems with it. The case debate proper, the Houthis bad argument. First of all, you don't have evidence about what the Houthis will do post-plan. Only our evidence makes the claim that the Houthis will negotiate a peace deal because our evidence indicates that their main goal is to establish a self-determined Shia government in Yemen, not to just go on a killing spree. Our theory evidence indicates that the ideal that the Houthis will just go on a killing spree because they're terrorists is part of American militarism and used to justify continuing selling arms to Saudi Arabia, which the negative falls victims to. Second, the argument about how they violated the ceasefire, our evidence is more specific here. It says that the reason the Houthis violated that ceasefire is because it was not a genuine ceasefire, because Saudi Arabia did not lift the blockade and wouldn't let them get any supplies, which obviously shows it was not a genuine move towards peace. But this is pretty irrelevant if we win on the disad that they're not Iranian proxies, because it proves we have no external motivation to keep killing people other than just to negotiate. The framing debate, this debate is kind of muddled, and we basically agree with them. We aren't saying that probability is the only thing that matters, but even extinction doesn't have an infinite amount. If you give it a substantially higher weight in impact calculus, that probability, you'll always have a bias in it towards magnitude times probability calculation. This means you should default act towards giving magnitude and probability an equal weight. If we win mitigation on the disad, it doesn't auto check that the impact outweighs, especially when they've functionally conceded the case. It has a pretty high magnitude too. The disad. At the top, the internal link they're going for does not make sense with the link they're going for. The two up of the 2NR was all about how manipulating oil prices can cause a great power war, but this does not make sense given the fact that the only link they've explained is the fact that Saudi Arabia needs capabilities. How the hell does the fact that Saudi Arabia no longer has fighter jets mean that Iran is going to suddenly increase oil prices when there's all these other things that deter them, such as like the US nuclear power, which they've conceded? It does not make sense, and the 2NR did not explain it, so you shouldn't do the work for them. That means the only real internal link they can win is the Yemen intervention stuff, but that also doesn't really make sense, and there's no explanation of how it would draw in great powers, which means that it can only function as a turns case argument, but that doesn't, but you can still vote AF if that's the case, because there's only a risk that the AF can reduce the genocide into interim, but the turns case proper, the first argument of how Iran will expand, first, this begs the question of the link, which will win some defense too, and second, it does not, it does not really make a ton of sense why Iran would just suddenly go to all these other countries and start other proxy wars there when we don't even change our posture towards any country to accept Saudi Arabia. The troops argument is the worst thing I've ever heard. It does not make sense. Why would the US suddenly, if the US sends more troops, that would obviously deter Iran. So I think you've taken out your own disad here, but it does not make sense, and can't turn the case because there's no evidence about why the troops would intervene in Yemen. Now, the disad is silly and their evidence is bad. Here are some other things that will definitely deter Iran more than arms sales to Saudi Arabia. They're right that Iran would probably like the plan, but they have to win that Iran is literally willing to invade Yemen over the plan alone. But first, troops definitely solve the disad. Our Gulf News evidence is fantastic and says that Iran would never intervene in the Arabian Peninsula because they know that the US troops are there. They'd be too scared to launch any attacks against Saudi Arabia because they could accidentally hit the US troops, and that would definitely draw the US into war, and they don't want to risk getting nuked to the Stone Age by the United States. Their Rosenfield evidence is the only answer they have here, and it's just terrible. I spent like 2 minutes of prep trying to actually understand what the highlighting said, and I still couldn't do it. But it is after we sent, it is before we sent troops there. It's from 2012, and so it definitely doesn't speak to how Iran feels about the troops that are currently there. Only our evidence speaks to the perception of the current troops in Saudi Arabia, which weren't there in 2012, and how they are effective at deterring Iran. But second, that Israel definitely deters everything except for the turns case in Yemen argument, because also if we win that they're not willing to launch Cyprus and Saudi Arabia, it doesn't make sense why they'd go in Yemen, because they wouldn't have any incentive to, they couldn't fight in Yemen without striking Saudi Arabia, which they would never do.
because there's no use of troops. But Israel definitely turns everything except for the turns case argument, because Israel and the UAE and all of our other partners, they're definitely, we still have relationships with them. We still sell them weapons. So Iran would not be willing to intervene anywhere except Yemen. Now, the Houthi debate, there are two warrants in the Theo card for why they're not proxies. First is religion. The Houthis are part of the Zadi sect, which is entirely distinct. If they're right, their goals are only tactical. That means we win because the Houthis are only partnering with Iran to defend against the Western states supporting the KSA. That's one easy porter. Either way, post-AF Houthis won't need Iran and would have no incentive to follow their mandate. Second is goals. The Houthis are no longer fighting. They don't want Iran to influence because the Houthis support social justice and federalism while Iran doesn't. Means if they're not scared about the US, they have no incentive to work with Iran. Their cards are both bad. They're all about how Iran wants to partner with the Houthis, and the Houthis are working with Iran now. It doesn't just prove that after the US arms sales, the Houthis will turn away from Iran, even if Iran wants to work with the Houthis. If we win, the Houthis aren't proxies debate. It proves that Iran has no incentive to intervene in Yemen because they have no allies there, and they wouldn't be supporting the Houthis. But they also don't get these two in our cards because we made the claim the Houthis weren't proxies in the 1AC, and you should have responded to it in the block or the 1AC.
Nice debate.
Great debate, y'all.
AF card, Doc? Yeah, okay, I'll do the AF card.
Yes, please.
The neg 1 set.
Okay, the app card doc should be sent. Let me know if there's anything else you need.
We're all in.
I just texted Henry.
Cool. Is Jen back?
Looks like no.
Okay. Viveth, have you refreshed and confirmed that that is your decision?
Yeah, I'm good.
Cool. Okay, Jen's on her way. All right. This was a really good debate. Congratulations to making it to the semifinals. The decision is a 3-0 for the negative.
I can go if you want.
Okay.
So I thought this was a really, really good debate, and I thought the 2AR and 2NR in particular were fantastic. I don't know if any of you all are seniors. I don't judge high school debate very much, but congratulations to all of you. So I thought that stopping arms sales to Saudi Arabia and decimating their military increases the risk of Iranian gray zone aggression and efforts to destabilize the region. That causes regional draw-in from powers that are concerned about international flows of energy, but also separately causes GCC states to ally with their South Asian partners, which causes an escalatory war between India and Pakistan. So I thought the Iran DA was basically divided into two parts, and the neg was ahead on the first one, which really implicated the second one. So the first part was the gray zone DA. So I thought that arms sales were important to deter Iranian gray zone tactics because it gives GCC states the ability to impose costs on tactics like oil price setting. That creates regional escalation dominance. So you have two arguments about other things that could stop Iran. So first is troops. I think that the neg's evidence, while old, is pretty good at selling the story that they're kind of going for, which is that there's no reason that US troops acting like a tripwire would actually function in the region because Iran's not going to do anything that directly attacks US interests, but through these separate tactics like using oil price setting or exporting a bunch right now, something like that. I think that the difficulty is that the 2NR starts with the spin that all of US deterrence posture is terminally done for. And this uniqueness problem presents a challenge to a lot of your really good, like other things solve arguments, because if it's true that the US deterrence posture is not going to really work for a lot of reasons like Trump, COVID, et cetera, that the only way that we can really stop Iranian aggression is by sending Saudi Arabia more arms. And their Falcon card says that our response to the Aramco attacks were to give more arms to Saudi Arabia and improve their air force, which makes me kind of believe the neg's story on the direction of deterrence here. And so while they have an older piece of evidence about the importance of arms sales, they have really good new evidence about the credibility of the US's deterrence posture. And your own arguments sort of prove this when you say deterrence fails. So then you have the Iran GCC stuff. So I think that from my reading, this is the scenario for escalation that the neg is describing, right? So they're like, Israel and GCC states would respond to Iranian attacks by doing something like striking them with their military. And that is how great powers get involved. And so it's difficult for me to see how Israel would deter, given that this is the scenario that the neg is describing for escalation to occur. And their Byron card is okay, saying that Iranian encirclement tactics would occur even if Israel were able to provide their nuclear deterrence or whatever. So this implicates the Houthi intervention DA. I think there's a separate question here about Iranian motives if the Houthis still agree to a political settlement. The neg is one that Iran is a revisionist power that seeks control over the Gulf. And so if that's true, then they would still do gray zone tactics even without, even if there was a political settlement in Yemen. So it's like, I don't really know how much this question is relevant because Iran still wants dominance in the Gulf. And so they would still play around and do oil price setting and whatever. I think the other problem here is that the ceasefire brings into a lot of questions about whether the app is treated as genuine, because your responses in the 2AR is that the Houthis don't believe that Saudi Arabia is being genuine. But if the US is still maintaining troops in the region, and there's some other stuff going on, I don't know if they believe it's genuine, but your evidence is pretty good. The app's evidence is pretty good that Houthis would accept a political settlement. So I think there's a risk of the case, but the risk of the DA is larger than that. The framing stuff, I don't really know what to do with this because I'm not really sure what to consider probability and magnitude the same means, but I just kind of evaluated the probability and magnitude of both scenarios relatively equally, I thought, because you all agreed to that. And I thought that the plan makes Iranian destabilization more likely, that the implications were these wars everywhere and the turns case that could be worse.
Yeah, I agree with basically all of that. I typed up my entire thoughts, so I won't rehash them because basically exactly what Vivek said. I think two things I want to emphasize. One is the deterrence credibility inevitably fail stuff was pretty important in sort of undermining a lot of your defense. And I don't necessarily think that concession really helps the neg, in truth, but I thought the 2AR definitely needed a moment where you sort of counteracted those arguments and explained why it implicated the DA. The second thing I wanted to emphasize is the external impact being conceded was a big problem, I think. Or at least I didn't really understand how any of your defense responded to the idea that their argument is not Iran sees the US as weak, they will launch nuclear strikes. Their argument, at least from their explanation, from my reading of the evidence, is that Iran will do things to destabilize the Middle East that cause the US to overreact and retaliate, and that causes a bunch of draw-in and bad things. And I just didn't think that your defense really applied to that particularly well. Everything else, decision-wise, is the same. I do want to say that I thought this debate got a lot better by the end, but the beginning and middle was pretty messy, and I thought that the 1AR and 2AR had a lot of outs. They conceded this fat Weiss card that there was no great power war ever, which obviously would answer this DA and the external impact thing that is a problem. They've agreed that neither Saudi Arabia or Iran will ever proliferate, which answers a lot of the destabilization stuff and why it would escalate. You have read a card that says Trump empirically will not retaliate to Iran messing with oil things that I thought could have been exploited to answer this internal link. And I thought that all the pieces were there. So I thought that you all were debating well, and it's just by the end of the debate, I think those things kind of fell by the wayside.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything that's been said. And I do agree that I thought there were things happening in the middle of the debate that could have been exploited better. I think the thing for the neg is I would have made a much bigger deal out of Iran being a revisionist power in this webinar, because you said it and you read this card and then they said not really anything, and I think that could be used very well to frame against the two there are other things that check. So I think you're decisively winning that this troops thing is your argument, in that if troops intervene that is worse. But I think that the Israel thing, yes, you have fine cards on it, but I think it could be way easier if you were Iran, we have one that Iran is hell-bent on just destroying the Middle East, expanding, etc. Which means that even if there are some things that might make them there are smaller things that might make them reconsider that, they will take this window to do so. But yeah, I thought it was a really excellent debate. So good job to all of y'all. Cool.
If the AF doesn't have any questions, I've got some thoughts on the neg strategy, but you all can go first. Okay, so for the neg, I think a few things that would